Welcome everyone to our webcast, Why Do Projects Fail? Getting ready for EIA 748 Earned Value Management. Today we'll discuss how EVM can help you avoid or mitigate problems. If you're a current Unanet customer or you're looking at Unanet as your project-based ERP system and you're in need of implementing or planning to implement an EVMS, this webinar will help you get started. Even if you're not quite ready to plan for formal reporting, the presentation today will help you learn best practices that will improve your project execution and your overall predictability. Now, toward the end of the presentation today, we'll introduce you to tools that can help you along your EVM journey, along with your Unanet system. So today, I'm very pleased to be joined by an EVM expert that I've known for many years from Humphrey & Associates, Paul Bolinger. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Paul.
Thank you for the introduction, Kim. Humphrey & Associates is a consulting company that offers system implementation, system design, a lot of training in project management, and, if necessary, staff augmentation in project management. The company is located in California, but don't let that worry you because most of the associates in the company are spread around the country like myself. I'm here in Haymarket, Virginia. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so before we actually start on EIA 748, I wanted to talk about project failure. Why do projects fail? And then we'll talk about having a system that uses or complies with the guidelines of EIA 748 and how that could help you mitigate the risk of project failure. So Humphreys, we have conducted numerous surveys about why projects fail. And it's funny, you'll find people claim that there's 3 reasons projects fail. And as you can see, somebody had the idea that there was 101 reasons that projects fail. We settled on 10. And the 10 reasons that projects fail include 7 that we believe can be mitigated by having a good earned value project management system. Before we talk about the 10 reasons, let's just talk about success and failure. As reported by PMI in at least one chapter, more than half the projects can be considered to have failed. That doesn't mean they were scrapped, or that doesn't mean everything was stopped. What it really means is that they failed to deliver to their expected goals of performance, cost, and or schedule. So that's a significant number. They say higher than 70, even higher than 50 is a frightening number. So it's certainly worth pursuing ways to mitigate problems if you are faced with this type of win-lose proposition. Now, I just quickly gathered a list of projects that had failed that I was aware of. And the reason that I made this list is the idea that nothing is too big to fail. If you just look at the size of these projects, billions of dollars in years in the making. And these are the ones that were canceled. This is far beyond failure. This is terminating the effort totally. So nobody is immune. There is no such thing as too big to fail. And although these are U.S. government-oriented projects, no one is immune. If you think to Boeing with the 777 project, that project, even though it yielded a very nice aircraft, took much longer and cost much more than was ever planned by Boeing. And so that could be considered a failure in process with a final good product out the other end. Now, these are the top 10 reasons that we found. And you'll notice on the left-hand side, the ones that are checked are the ones that we believe can be mitigated by having an earned value project management system that follows the guidelines of EIA 748. The 3 that are just have the bullet there are not something that can be addressed by the system. But look at number 1, inadequate or poor communications. Now, that's not the type of communications where you're standing around the water cooler exchanging stories. If you think about it, how could poor communications contribute so much to the failure of a project? But if you think we don't communicate the goals, we don't communicate the status, we don't communicate the plans, if those basic pieces of information about the project are not openly, readily, and frequently communicated, the project really doesn't stand much of a chance. Now, if you just let your eyes go down the list a little bit, number 2, scope creep, poor change control. Inaccurate or inadequate cost and budget estimating, poor risk management, inadequate resource forecasting. These are things that can be made better with a good project management system. So, again, failure to communicate can be damaging if you think about the things that have to be communicated, and if they weren't communicated well, or in some cases at all. If we don't have the goals communicated, we don't know what's expected. Don't have the risks, we're quiet about danger. Don't know the schedule, we have no idea when things are supposed to happen. Don't have budget goals, we can pretty much spend as we see that we need to. Status, if you don't know where you are, then you won't know where you're going to go. If we didn't know about the assumptions on the project, then you're certainly going to wish that at some point that you had known. And then finally, if we don't know the rules of the road, we really can't do the project, we can't do our work safely. So that's how bad failure to communicate can be. Now, if you think about the process of management, at least the way we see it at Humphrey's, we see it as a 4-step process. We need to organize, plan, direct, and then control. Now, these go on simultaneously, but they do occur at least at the beginning of a project in this 4-step view. Now, to organize, we need to organize the people and the work. That organizing of people and work goes on inside of our project management system. We need to plan. We need to plan the scope, schedule, and budget for the project. That goes on inside the system. We need to direct the actions of the team and the resources on the project. And lastly, we need to exercise management control. Now, we will spend most of our time in the management control step of the process of management. So let's take a look at that. Management controlling is really the same as all types of controlling. It's made up of 3 sub-steps: measure, analyze, and act. An earned value or system that looks like an EIA 748 system is rich in measurements. That's the point. A baseline is created and we measure against the baseline. Then we analyze the differences. Are we on track? Are we off track? Where are we? And then we decide how to act to get back on track. So measure, analyze, act. That's where most of the management effort will be spent during the life of the project. Now, all of that is accomplished within a management system. Historically, management systems are made up of these: policies, procedures, hardware and software tools, and the people that collect the information, process it, and operate the system, and manage the project. So think about that for a second. Our system, an EIA 748 type system, needs to have policies. Those policies are usually found in some sort of a system description. Procedures. There are often 10 or 12 procedures specific to projects within the company. They're specific to projects because projects do things differently. They might have a different update period. They might have a different process for handling changes. They might have a different view of the world in terms of scope, planning, or frequency of updates or schedule analysis and things like that. So each project has unique, or can have unique procedures. We're going to look at some tools, as Kim said, later that are specific to our earned value EIA 748 system. And then, of course, the people that are in the system are the most important element. This is a block diagram, just a common system architecture for this type of system. I want you to focus first on the Integrated Master Schedule, the IMS. Most of the project information in terms of the planning, the measuring, the statusing begins in the Integrated Master Schedule. So that an EIA 748 system is highly dependent on a schedule. Now, in terms of tools, that could be Microsoft Project, Primavera, OpenPlan, or others. Once the information is established and a baseline is created, that information is passed to another tool generically referred to as the Earned Value Engine. The one you're going to look at today is called For Project. In the Earned Value Engine, the base planning from the schedule is joined with budget rates, forecasting rates, algorithms for earning value, baseline change control mechanisms, and so that engine turns schedule information into budget information. Coming from Unanet, we have the costs that are associated with the work that's been performed on the project. Those costs are married with the planned and earned value in the engine. Now, an earned value engine, although the one you're going to look at today is not terribly complicated, is generally not some place where you wish to have a lot of people logging in and trying to do analysis. There are other tools, analytics, we generally refer to them as, and the one you're going to look at today is called Empower. And that tool is a web-based tool that allows pretty much anyone on the project to have access to the information for which they have permissions. So it makes the project come alive on their desktop. So they can look at their plans, they can look at their forecasts, they can do variance analysis, they can write corrective action plans, they can generate reports. So that's mainly the way that most people interface with the system. They don't need to get into the schedule, they don't need to get into the Earned Value Engine, they don't need to get into Unanet. They look at this system from some sort of an analytical tool. Now, at Humphreys, we postulate that it's possible to have a system in place that's going to increase your probability of success. If you think about what we've already talked about and the reasons for failure and what can be in a system, you would see that if you have a properly constructed and diligently employed system, you go a long way towards mitigating the risks of failure. Now, EIA 748 is really nothing more than guidelines for a good project management system. They're called earned value management systems because they have this element of earned value in them that other types of systems don't. But it's really just a basic project management system against the guidelines in this standard. Now, EIA 748 really is just common sense project management. If you're doing it in the U.S. government arena, that is common sense, but you're under the microscope of your customers and some of the compliance agencies that exist inside the government. If you look at EIA 748 and you look at the guidelines, you'll find that they cover about 80% of the Project Management Institute body of knowledge. So the Project Management Institute, with whatever it has now, 1 million members worldwide, has this body of knowledge about project management. Over 80% of what you're told to do in that body of knowledge is accomplished in an EIA 748 system. The items that aren't are not the core items. The items that aren't are things like project startup or project closeout, project staffing, things that are not mainline organizing, planning, directing, and controlling. So the basic data in this earned value system that's EIA 748 compliant is planned value. That's the time phase baseline value of what we're going to accomplish. It's the earned value. That's when we measure how much of that plan was done. The spent, we figure out what it cost for the work that was accomplished. And then the forecast, what's left to go. Now, if you only had, we always say, if you had time to do only one thing, that one thing would be the last bullet on this chart. You would always have a time-phased, detailed, step-by-step plan to get to the end of the project from where you are. So where you are is the planned versus earned versus spent. We establish that to know where we are so that we can make our time-phased plan to get to the end. Now, the benefits of having a system like this are many. I tried to pick some of the ones that really hit home with me. You have a documented methodology. One of the biggest problems noted by the Government Accounting Office in the area of project management, and in particular the area of agile project management, is the lack of documented methodology. Things are not done the same way, and people don't know how to do them. So this type of system has documented roles and responsibilities. It has the discipline of organizing and planning and measuring and so on. It forces communication. It forces us to put out the goals, the plans, the status, the forecast, so that we are communicating the important things. It has integrated cost and schedule plans and constant or near constant forecasting of the outcome. So those are the main benefits I see of having this system. We have customers at Humphreys and Associates who do not have a requirement from the government or any other source to have such a system. They do it on their own because they can see the benefits of this type of a system. Now, this chart just kind of summarizes this idea of communications and an earned value management system to try to drive it home a little bit. In an earned value management system, we go to great lengths to document the scope. The scope is documented from its source all the way into the schedule. We know who's responsible for performing that scope. We know what the risks are. That's all done on a structure, a work breakdown structure, so that we have a way to roll up, roll down, and communicate all of this information. It's all done in a schedule with budgets and goals, technical, cost, and schedule goals. We always have that path forward that we have that we call the forecast. And we know where we are. We know where we are planned. We know where we are spent. And now, with earned value, we know where we are in accomplishment. So that's the beauty of an earned value management system or an EIA 748 system, is this information brought together into an integrated system. Meanwhile, we've gone to a lot of trouble to create this baseline that we're measuring against, and we want to protect it. So one element of EIA 748 is baseline change control to protect ourselves against scope creep. And scope creep, we say seemingly good ideas lead to bad outcome. Scope creep will lead to bad outcome. So how do I get an EIA 748 system? Well, the implementations can run from very simple to extremely complex depending on what you do for a living in your company. The simplest systems are where you have labor only and you're doing it all with in-house personnel. So these systems are very basic. You plan what you're going to do with your people, you measure it, you schedule it, you collect the costs for it, and you figure out where you are. It's under your control. Somewhat more complex, you're using your labor, maybe with outside subcontract labor, maybe some materials. When you introduce materials and building things, you start to get more complex. You have to handle more than just your own labor. The most complex situations can contain labor, material, significant amounts, subcontractors. They might require design, the project might require design, build, buy, assemble, test. So functionally, you're moving through time and you have different resources and different types of control problems with those resources. So that's the most complex type situation. So you need to consider your current state of readiness. And then one of the factors is if you were going to implement the system, would you do it on new projects only, or would you try to convert? It's difficult to convert to an earned value situation because if you didn't have the planning in the beginning, it's hard to figure out exactly where you are. But people can do it. Now, what is it going to cost? Well, part of that is what's it going to cost once you have the system, the operational cost. So along the way, the decisions that you make about policies and procedures and tools can make the system more or less expensive and more or less effective. So there are significant, maybe 6 or 7 or 8 key decisions that have to be made when you decide to do this. That's why we say you should have an advisor like Humphrey's or a similar type advisor to help you see the decisions that need to be made. One of them I have there in the second bullet. When you're going to budget a significant number of, let's say, teams or control accounts or developer leads, if you budget with hours only at these people, that's how they understand their work. If you now want to train your first level management in rates for direct costs, rates for indirect costs, rates for G&A, how do rates affect the project, what happens when there's a rate change, how do we predict a rate change, how do we explain it, you see immediately how complicated it becomes. So the cost of having a system that budgets completely everyone to the full cost level is more than the system that would budget in hours only and then have subject matter experts deal with the rest. The other 3 bullets are just indicators of other decisions amongst those that need to be made that can drive the operational cost. Now, we're always interested in how long is it going to take. I remember we used to be involved in implementing SAP system. And the story always was, well, a year from now, you won't remember that you used to have a different system. And that was pretty much true. But how long did it take to get the system in place? Well, that's a big system, much bigger than what we're talking about here. For an EIA 748 system, if you're starting from nowhere, you're going to build a project management system, figure 9 months to a year. A year from now, you'll have a system and you won't remember that you didn't have one. If you're partly there, let's say you already have a good scheduling capability. Maybe you already know about budgeting. Maybe you already use the WBS, things like that. So if you're partly there, you could say in 3 to 6 months, you're going to be able to wrap up the system and be using it. If you're more than partly there, then lucky you. You really need to get things cleaned up and finish it up. Just remember, the idea of how long things take is on major Department of Defense projects, the first integrated baseline review takes place within the first 180 days. That means it can take up to 6 months to put a baseline in place and go through 2 months of performance. So you can see it takes, the bigger the project, the longer it takes. So the expectation of having your system in place can be judged by that. Okay, how much might it cost? Well, of course, starting from scratch is the most costly. We do surveys at Humphrey's. Historically, we found 1.5 to 2.5% of the contract target cost for the first contract or project that's going to be implemented. Adding to things you already have, well, the cost goes down if you've already got things going on. And then last, if you are ongoing, The cost of ongoing operation depends on what you classify as a cost of the system. If task level management is a cost of the project management system, that drives you to the high side. But it can run from the low of 1, you can see, up to 2.5 to start from scratch. All right, how do you pay for it? Well, you got to be careful. Your company would have some sort of cost accounting standards. Some of the costs are and usually have to be classified as indirect. For example, if you're buying tools and they're going to be used across the company, you can't really charge that to a single project. But it all depends on your accounting disclosure statement. So you need to plan carefully how you would pay for it. Now, formally, how does it happen? Well, if you have a requirement, you're going to find that requirement in the request for proposal. That asks you to provide a plan. It says, tell me about the system you're going to use. How is that different than what you do today? How do you know it's going to work? How long is it going to take? And you've provided that in your proposal. Once you win, your contract will contain requirements that are tailored to the size and type of project that you're on, asking you to implement that system that you described. Now, when we have a system like this, that system produces artifacts or products or things. So let's just take a look at some of the things that are produced or used in our system, and you'll get an idea of what it's like. The work breakdown structure is key to having an organized project management system. It's also one of the products. You'll see it everywhere. You'll see it in the schedule. You'll see it in the budgeting. You'll see it in the forecasting. So a project work breakdown structure is a key element and a key product of your system. Knowing where the contract work or the project work is going to be done on the work breakdown structure is another key product. It's a scope to work breakdown structure or statement of work to work breakdown structure matrix. It is used to understand where all the work is going to be and to make sure that we understand there is not work planned for that should not be in there, that is not part of the authorized effort. Another product of the system is a responsibility assignment matrix. It marries the what on the work breakdown structure to the who of the organization so that we clearly document, understand, and keep responsibility assignment so that we know for all of that scope we just looked at who's responsible for getting it accomplished. So this is another key product of an earned value or EIA 748 system. If you just take a look at this for a minute, let your eyes focus down on the enlarged or a 3D box down at the bottom. We try to go from the contract work breakdown structure to marry that with the organization to develop elements of work we call control accounts. Call them whatever you wish, but they're called control accounts in many places. Inside the control account, you'll find detailed work package plans and future plans. So this is the general scheme for an earned value management system. Planning in detail in the near future, planning in aggregate levels in the far future, inside of clearly defined elements of work with clearly defined responsibilities. So that's the heart of an earned value EIA 748 system right there. Remember, one of the key elements is the baseline that we're looking for. We have to have a plan of where we're going to be at each point in time from the beginning of the authorized work to the end of the authorized work. People generally plan in periodic elements, weekly plan or a monthly plan. Once that is aggregated, it becomes a cum-to-date plan. So you see the monthly plans here, which might be people, might be head counts running from one person up to 12 to 11. You can see it's a generally bell-shaped curve, and that bell-shaped curve yields that thick blue line or curve that we call the S curve, like the letter S. And so that's our time phase. plan that we're going to perform and measure against. So that's a key element of an earned value system, is to have time-phased plans at the right level with the right elements of cost so that we have a good baseline. Everything has to be under control in terms of the schedule and the budget. This is budget control. I was once called to a company to do some training, and as I was there, in the very first 5 minutes, the CEO of the company introduced me and said, "This is the man that's here to make sure we don't have another $3 million mistake like we had last year." Well, after I recovered from my shock, I was able to find out that the mistake made last year was they had lost control of the budgets in this small company, and they had budgeted $3 million more than the value of the contract. People worked on those budgets, people spent money against those budgets, and when the smoke cleared, they had spent more than they were ever going to be paid. Devastating to anybody, but especially a company that size. So budget control is in the heart of the earned value system. The tools that you take a look at have budget control mechanisms. Reporting. This is just, don't worry about looking at the details on this report. This is an example of one of the reports that is required in a U.S. government EIA 748 situation. The important part is right in the middle, if you can see it. We always talk about 3 time frames in the earned value world. Current period, whether that's last week or last month, the cum to date, and the at complete. So we're always thinking, where am I? Where have I been? Where have I been recently? Where am I going? How do I get there? So this is the guts. Just by looking at one of the reports, you can see the mindset of having this type of system, constantly trying to figure out where we are against our baseline, where we're going, where we've been, how we're going to get where we want to go. Now, again, just to reiterate, how we get where we want to go is, in our world, called the estimate to complete. It's the dotted line, which is the detailed step-by-step plan to get from where you are to the end of the project. That plan is one of the key elements of an EIA 748 system. We need to have a detailed, time-phased, valued, resource-valued, cost-valued plan. It all comes together into a system that you can get through the earned value engine, analyze like this through your analyzer. And in this case, what we're trying to emphasize is that there's not just one outcome. In very large implementations of EIA 748 by customer requirement, there's the need to have best case, worst case, and most likely views of where we're going to end up on the project. So you can see the element of risks and opportunities being integrated with the earned value system is critical. We inform the earned value plans, we inform the earned value forecasts from the risk management tool set. So this is just an overall high-level picture of the information that would be coming out of your EIA 748 system. So let's recap. I have 2 charts, this one and the next one. So we just know that we have to define policies and procedures to have a system. We want a tool-rich system. I underline tool-rich because the better your tools, the easier your life. You need to have trained people, especially in the procedures and what are they trying to do. You need to have a good project plan, and it has to be communicated, and it has to be kept in your system. Goals, communicating goals, scope, schedule, budget, goals. It's in the earned value system. You got to make sure people can get to it and see it. Schedule is king. We have a saying that says, if it's not in the schedule, it's not real work. If somebody thinks they're working on something and they can't point to it in the schedule, it's not really there. It's not going to happen. It doesn't have predecessors. It doesn't have successors. So the schedule is key. And lastly, duration and budget estimating are weaknesses. Once you have a system like this, you are collecting information that you'll be able to use the next time around. We want to have a robust risk management process that we integrate. We want to have a great, stable business rhythm, repeatable, measure, analyze, act, frequent forecasting. We want to understand what makes a poor decision, and we want to improve our decision-making skills using our system. And then we want to have baseline change control, and we want to communicate as much as we can. So that's an EIA 748 system, front to back, top to bottom. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Paul. It was great to hear you, and learned so much by listening to you. And you're right; it is really all about people, processes, and tools. And so I'm going to quickly go over a couple of the tool sets that really would help make the EVMS, the entire system, come alive. And the first tool would be what we call the EV engine, and that is for project. It truly is a very modern tool. It's easy to learn and to use. It integrates well with Unanet. So Unanet is able to feed the actuals and the information into for project. It also has a great integration with Microsoft Project Server, as well as P6. And it does have many metrics, so a lot of metrics to let you know where you are. Paul talked multiple times about understanding the status and where you are on the project, and a tool like For Project is going to give you that information. It not only integrates with Unanet, but it also integrates with Empower, so that you can get all the EV analytics that you really need to run the project, and that all stakeholders have the information that they need to run the project. So just a couple of quick screenshots of For Project. First up here, you can see the nice, easy to use Microsoft Office style interface. So, it's very intuitive. You'll be able to look at those metrics. You see things like cost variance percent cum, CPI cum, SPI cum, TCPI, one of my favorite metrics. You can see those readily on the screen, and then you can get that summarized. So you can summarize it by the work breakdown structure, your OBS, or any other structure that you may have in your system. You're also able to drill down. So drill down throughout the work breakdown structure or throughout the OBS, again, or any other structure that you may be using that's important to you. And then you're able to see and view information and performance by resource and by element of cost. So you really get a complete picture of where you are, up, down, sideways, and crossways. Again, you'll see actuals. So actuals can be imported. In this case, actuals will be imported from Unanet. And then we're able to see variances. So Paul talked a little bit about SP&A. You'll have all of that information here in For Project, and you'll be able to see the variances, both from a current period, cum to date, and at complete. Paul also showed Format 1, one of the formats for formal reporting, and For Project will actually produce that exact same format for us, so that we're able to see where we are and what we're actually sending to our customer. We're also going to see the same kind of format within the Empower Analytics tool. Okay, so now we're moving on to Empower, and Empower is an EV analytics tool. So, Paul was talking about it earlier. It really does make all the information from the earned value management system come alive for all the stakeholders on the project. So it's a great way for everybody to be able to see where they are and get reports so that they can actually act on the metrics that are coming up for them on their different project or their control accounts. So some of the benefits of Empower is that you really do get that complete analytics look, and you have a reporting solution that is available to everybody, and it is web-based. So it's easy to use, It's the best in class for cost and schedule analytics, and in just a second I'll show you some of the users of the tool. You're able to do variance analysis and actually collect all of that information in one place and then see that up on the dashboard along with the corrective action. We also have the data-driven analytics so that we have the audit support that we need, and all the dashboards are configurable. And you'll be able to utilize and leverage your current EVM as well as your IMS software tools that you've already invested in. And Paul talked about having a business rhythm, and Empower really will help you stay in that business rhythm. You're going to have the information you need real time in order to make great business decisions. And from it's a lower cost of ownership. It is cloud ready with no client install. So that's a great way to get that information and lower your overall cost on your project. Just quickly, here are some of the folks that are using the Empower tool. So you see some large companies like Rockwell Collins, Jacobs, NASA. Empower is gaining quite a bit of traction out there in the industry as a top world-class EVMS analytics tool. This just gives you an idea of some of the customizable dashboards that you can create. Again, you've got the dashboards over here where you can see the blue, green, yellow, and red for really looking at things by doing management by exception. You're able to see the schedule. So down here in the left-hand quadrant, you're able to see where you are from your schedule perspective, import your schedule in and take a look at it, and then any other kind of trends within your control accounts or work packages so that you can look and really dive into the data and understand where you are. And this is just another look at a dashboard. Again, a very nice report so that we can see exactly where we are going. Great trend reports over here in the left quadrant. And here's that variance analysis that we were talking about earlier so that you're able to see what that looks like. And you're also able to look at the corrective action that's associated with the control account that you're looking at. All right, so to complete the tool section out is Unanet. And Unanet is a project-based ERP, and we really are that one software for projects, people, and financials. So, and make the project lifecycle come alive. So we'll start with plan. So you'll be able to budget and plan your work as well as your resources and your purchases, and you can start that as early as the proposal phase. And by doing that for all of your projects, that's going to give you a really great look at your overall pipeline. Then from an execute perspective, we go from the proposal, and in Unanet, it's one click then to turn that contract that you just won into an active project. And here you're able to collect time and your expenses as well as all of your purchases. And this is the section where we'll actually feed these actuals then back into a tool like For Project. Then we move to the monitor. So you're able to see the real-time status of your project with dashboards and reports. And if you're not in need of formal EV, the Unanet tool can handle a simple best practice project management EV type technique. So that could be great practice for you as you get ready for your EIA 748 requirement. Then we're able to invoice. And so with the time and expense directly integrated here, there's no delay in getting your billings out, and that's going to help you maximize your cash flow. And then Unanet also has a full GL package. So it's got accounts receivable, accounts payable, all your financials. That's a huge differentiator for project managers, as when they look at their dashboard, they're actually able to see all the information from budgets to actuals to estimates, but they're also able to see things that you typically have to join a disparate system together. So they're able to see their profitability, their cash flow, unbilled, so really being able to hone in and manage that project very holistically. So Unanet is truly that one tool to help manage your business and then all of the projects that make that business up. So I think we've covered everything, Paul. So from a perspective of best practice, how you can help mitigate, solve problems on your project, and how to start to get ready for EIA 748. And here are some contact information. So there's Paul's contact information. Awesome SME to reach out to, as well as Gary and Glenn, who can help you with either Encore Analytics or for project. And then feel free, if you have anything you want to talk about Unanet or earned value management, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is right there. So thank you very much and appreciate your time. And again, Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, Ken.
Hold on just a second.